Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star review. We would certainly appreciate it. I'm Chierstin Susel here with Johnny Venerable. And Johnny, we had to move our show up a little bit because we've got some breaking news to discuss. Earlier in the day, Kliff Kingsbury said that DeAndre Hopkins was getting a second opinion after receiving an MRI on his knee.
Yeah.
Suffered an injury at the end of the game on Monday. And now Adam Schefter just tweeting out that he is expected to miss the rest of the regular season with a sprained knee. The team is hopeful to get him back at some point in the postseason, though. So here we are doing an emergency pod here to discuss what that means for the Cardinals.
Yeah, not the fun breaking news that we like to do here at PHNX Cardinals podcast. The not so fun. And thinking about Monday night's loss, it can always get worse. And here's a perfect example of that. Immediate, quick takeaways. Josina Anderson just tweeted out, literally right as our intro was rolling, it's an MCL. It's not an ACL. It's an MCL. MCL sprain, maybe partial tear. We don't know. Typically, if you're considering surgery, there is a small tear. And goodness for Hopkins, this is right after getting over a lengthy hamstring injury that knocked him out, along with Kyler Murray, for upwards of a month's time. So I think the best news we can take away from this is emphasis on regular season, right? So that would give him a full month off before the Cardinals kick off their postseason play, which, if you ask me, is probably going to be in the first round of the NFC playoffs, either hosting or on the road. So, I mean, can they win 3 of the next 4 without DeAndre Hopkins? I think it's possible, but just in the short term, it felt too good to be true going into that Monday night game. The Rams were falling apart. They had all these COVID absences. The Cardinals were, knock on wood, the healthiest they had been since early October. There was talk about getting J.J. Watt back, and now it's a deflating feeling off of that loss. No Hopkins again. So yeah, it's too bad. I'm disappointed for Hopkins, but what I will say is, I mean, the Cardinals have a robust receiving core that we talk about and we praise constantly. They've got an MVP caliber quarterback. They should be able to overcome this in the short term. Do I think they can win a championship without number 10, without DeAndre Hopkins? It's going to be very difficult. But if we're talking about Hopkins returning for wild card weekend, it's another conversation that we'll have to have.
Yeah, I don't know why, but maybe it's just because I'm extra cautious with injuries this season because of the DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray stuff that happened earlier in the season, where we were all just like, oh, they'll be fine, especially DeAndre Hopkins. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah. He's not practicing, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm probably just like overly cautious at this point. But I'm telling you, I had a really bad feeling yesterday when we were talking about the injuries to D-Hop and to James Conner. And James Conner, thankfully, he's day-to-day. And so that's good news here. But as far as DeAndre Hopkins goes, they've shown, and you mentioned that robust wide receiver room, that they can win without him. But he is one of the best receivers in the game. I mean, he is the X factor that is going, you need him. You need those kinds of X factors on your team to be able to win it, to be a chip. And that's why, they brought him to Arizona. And so, my big concern here is not can they win in the short term without him, because they've proven that they've been able to do that. But it's just like when it comes to injuries, and to be honest with you, I don't know a ton about MCL versus ACL and things like that. I really don't. I've never had an injury like that. Yeah. And so when it comes to healing, I mean, I know guys come back and the timetable is different for everybody. And, it's very specific, and we don't know the specifics of this injury. But My fear is just that he comes back and he's not the same DeAndre Hopkins. It's one thing to be able to say that, okay, he's back, he's active, but would we get the same DeAndre Hopkins? And so that's the question mark that will remain up in the air until he eventually returns.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question. Same question everybody has right now with number 99, J.J. Watt. What kind of player is he going to be eventually if he does suit up in the postseason or before? Are we going to get 75, 80% J.J. Watt? Is that good enough or better than what the Cardinals have? I think with regard to both of these players, unlike the quarterback position, for instance, you've got other guys that can step up. You've got guys you can rotate in and out. And this is the NFL. I mean, the injuries happened to the best teams. There were large stretches last year in which the Packers didn't have Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers almost went to the Super Bowl, right? I just think that to beat the best team, this isn't, a hot take. This is cliche. To beat the best teams, you have to have the best players late in the year. You have to have the DeAndre Hopkins and the Kyler Murrays of the world playing their best football. My biggest concern would be if he does come back, like, what does that look like? To your point, Chierstin, is he hampered at all? What kind of rapport does he have in time to build with Kyler Murray? But again, I think a lot of this receiving core, as do you. Rondale Moore now steps into a bigger role. AJ Green, I think, not so coincidentally, played his best game of the year, I thought, on Monday Night Football, making a lot of tough catches against the LA Rams. Christian Kirk, 2 40-plus yard receptions. You probably consider, elevating Antoine Wesley's role. He's going to be the outside receiver, assuming they don't bring back a certain, other outside receiver. And then Zach Ertz, number 86, who was already starting to acclimate more to this offense. There's enough pieces to score points in bunches and to win all 4 of these final games, right? So, really only Dallas has. Go ahead.
You said something. So you don't think there's any way that you bump Rondale Moore to the outside and Moore and AJ Green outside receivers, and you keep Christian Kirk in the slot?
I think Christian has the most experience outside, but you look at the template that they set when Hopkins was already out this year. Antoine Wesley played outside receiver with AJ Green. Kirk and Rondale Moore remained underneath. That's probably what they will do. Because Kirk struggles with press man coverage with number 1 corners on the outside. He flourishes underneath.
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't even think putting Kirk on the outside would be an option. I would keep him inside.
In certain packages, they may mix and match some players. I did notice the final possession of the game on Monday Night Football when Hopkins wasn't out there. They were moving Kirk around. And as long as you can get he and Hopkins on single coverage, you're in good shape. But I think that, again, the biggest thing for me is Kyler Murray has to play elevated football now because, if you want to be considered an upper echelon quarterback, you have to make others better. And I'm not going to make excuses for this team. Even with Hopkins out, there is no reason this team should still not win the NFC West. Hopkins is an elite player. He's a top 1 to 2 to 3 receiver in the NFL, but they were winning games without him with Colt McCoy. And they're better than all 4 of these teams, even without him, down the stretch. The Colts are inconsistent. The Lions are the Lions. The Seahawks aren't it this year. And then you've got a Dallas game, maybe a coin flip game, but I like Arizona's culture right now more than Dallas. Without DeAndre Hopkins, I still think they should go into every one of these games as the favorite, and I think they will maybe outside of the Dallas game.
So backtracking a little bit, Beanard made a good point. Second primetime game in a row where we get a major injury in the final desperation drives. It's so true. We saw that happen against Green Bay. And was it just that was Kyler Murray, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then DeAndre Hopkins was already injured, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Kyler got hurt the second to last play against the Packers on that scramble run.
Again, it's like, it's a coincidence. So it's not like you could sit there and be like, dang it, if you weren't in that position where you had to be in a desperation drive to win the game on freaking prime time, it would have never happened. So it's not like you can sit there and say that because you never know. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with it, but you certainly don't want to see it, right? Like what you don't want is to lose a primetime game on the final drive, back-to-back games, and then come out of it after an awful loss where you're like, frustrated about it, etc. Not that I would consider Green Bay an awful loss, but the way that it ended was certainly frustrating. And, now you're down players, you're down star players. And so that's another. I'm telling you, Johnny, yesterday I just had this feeling that the news about DeAndre Hopkins wasn't going to be good.
And like, I think most of us thought that it was not a lower body injury after Monday night. He kind of slammed his head on that almost touchdown, maybe second to last drive of the game. And I think most of us just assumed he got taken out because he got banged up and he's, seeing stars and he's got a concussion, right? And the concussion's terrible in its own right, but it's manageable after time, you would think. It's not a significant, injury that would maybe require surgery. Is this going to be a lost season for DeAndre Hopkins? You don't want to say that, but between the hamstring now and then this situation, I'm not saying that I think they should shut him down for the year, but I do think that if there's a serious risk to further injure him, and to your point, Chierstin, he's not right, and you're just trotting him out there to trot out number 10, I don't think that's in the Cardinals' best interest. They need him with this franchise healthy and long-term. You do not want to have him go through a lengthy rehab process. Say he's got a sprained MCL and he rushes back out there and it makes it worse. And he tears, God forbid, a bunch of ligaments in his knee in a wild card loss. And he spends the entire offseason rehabbing. That's not a smart move. I think that you go with what you have right now, obviously, with the top 4 receivers we listed, and you make it work. And if you get a healthy and ready to go Hopkins and wild card round, kind of like if you remember, Anquan Bolden was in and out of the lineup when they went to the Super Bowl in 2008, 2009. He had, of course, the concussion against the Jets. He had a hamstring injury. They eventually just got him back against the Falcons, and they just started rolling as an organization, as a franchise. But he missed a lot of time that season. So they had other players, Steve Breston, of course, Larry Fitzgerald, that they relied on top of the running game to get them to where they need to go. And I think they have more than enough weapons, I think, to win out. That's not a question in my mind. Super Bowl, I don't think so. But to get through this gauntlet the next 4 weeks, absolutely. No excuses.
I want to get to what, if this is accurate, and he will miss the rest of the regular season at least, get to what his numbers will be. And you mentioned the name Larry Fitzgerald. Also get into, is it time for Steve Keim to pick up the phone? But first, want to talk to you guys a little bit about the DraftKings Sportsbook app. They've got a promo for our viewers. If you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use the code PHNX, bet $1 on any team to score in a football game. You can win $100 in free bets. It's that simple. When they score, you score. DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also get skin in the game with new same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. So again, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app using that code PHNX. Bet $1 on any team to score in a game. You're going to get $100 in free bets if they do. But as always, it's 21 over with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Arizona only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customers only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. All right. So if DeAndre Hopkins, if we don't see him again, and this report is accurate, he will finish with career lows in catches with just 42 catches, and yards with 572 yards and 8 touchdowns, which is not a career low. So that's good news. But I don't think he's ever dealt with anything like this. So that would make a whole lot of sense. But, even when he was healthy, the silver lining, I suppose, is that a lot of times we were having the conversation of how do we get DeAndre Hopkins more involved in the offense, because you could argue that he wasn't even being targeted enough because of all the weapons that the Cardinals have. So it's not like last year where he was, I don't want to insult anyone by saying he's the only option, but they relied a lot more heavily on DeAndre Hopkins. Too much on him last season. So that this season, completely different, night and day difference with their usage of him.
Yeah, they play backyard football. We've talked about that last year. There was really no rhythm to the offense, and that we saw that in the second half. Teams made adjustments, and when Kyler couldn't go to number 10, the offense sputtered. I think it's a compliment to Kliff Kingsbury and company that they've diversified this offense enough where any singular player could score a touchdown in a given time frame, and you wouldn't be surprised. Now, a lot of those have been gobbled up by James Conner for obvious reasons lately, but I mean, Zach Ertz could have a big game. Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore, AJ Green, they are equipped to handle this, I think is the best way to put it. And I'm with you, Chierstin. This was my first thought after this happened was this was last year, even though they did tumble down the stretch, they might lose out as a result. This year, after what we've seen, go into San Francisco, win without both Hopkins and AJ Green and Kyler Murray, go into Seattle, win with Colt McCoy, no Hopkins, right? No Kyler Murray. Now you have Kyler back, right? And you're going to be favored. To me, it's okay. Make it work in the short term. You can still put up points. They were moving the ball efficiently. That Monday Night Football, they were moving the ball efficiently that first drive. They didn't target Hopkins one time. Now you could say, well, he's a diversion. He respects so much coverage. And that, of course that's true. But I think that the belief that they have with so many of the other options at receiver, whether it's tight end or wide receiver or running back, now that you get Chase Edmonds out of the backfield, this is not a poverty franchise with skill players. We have talked all about it's a top, 2 to 3 receiving core in the NFL when Hopkins is healthy. And now it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12. And that's still good enough to win games in the NFL.
Jacob asking who is wide receiver 1 now, Kirk or Green? That would be AJ Green, no?
Yes, absolutely. So Kirk leads the team in receiving yards, but I think Green right now is the more dangerous of the two. I think he's playing better football. It's a good problem to have. I think both of these are your top two guys moving forward. But again, we had this conversation yesterday, Chierstin, with Frank Sanders on our show last night in studio. Rondale Moore now has to become a bigger part of this offense from a vertical standpoint. You have to get him involved downfield. No more gimmick horizontal stuff. Get him in space. He can be a difference maker, right? You've got Christian Kirk, Rondale Moore were second-round picks. AJ Green, once upon a time, of course, was a first-round pick. Zach Ertz is probably going to be an all-decade tight end. They have enough weapons to score points. And their running game, we forget about it. They're going to have a running back score 20 touchdowns this year. So I just, again, different year, be a huge problem. This year, I think it's manageable until the playoffs. And then, you're playing Aaron Rodgers and you're playing Tom Brady, and they have loaded skill players, and that becomes infinitely difficult. But we'll have that discussion, when it's time to have that discussion.
Again, it is a sprained knee. Somebody asking on Twitter, and feel free to ask more questions. We appreciate Jacob chiming in our chat and asking some questions. But somebody on Twitter asking, could someone explain why he would need surgery on a sprained knee? He's not getting surgery. Am I correct in saying that? Did I miss something?
So second opinion means I'm avoiding surgery right now.
Okay. I was I missed something here.
I think the approach the Cardinals are taking is sprained MCL. Maybe there's a slight tear. I think he's going to try to rehab, stay off of it, and say, okay, wild card weekend, I'm going to try to play. And if it doesn't improve over time, they may scrap those plans. He might opt to have surgery. If it looks more optimistic, then they'll take it kind of week by week. It's a JJ Watt 2.0 scenario, in my opinion.
So again, the Huck Show on Twitter told him to go ahead and join our show because we're discussing it right now. So if he was chiming in, again, he asked the question, someone explain why he would need surgery on a sprained knee. It is a sprained knee and not near, which means he doesn't need surgery. He's just trying to heal that thing up to prevent further injury by sitting out the rest of hopefully just the regular season and be able to join the team in the postseason. So there that is. Do you want to take a crack at he says he's joining the show. So
okay, great. Welcome.
Do you want to take a crack on whether or not, because I'm starting to see it in the chat, and it was something that we were actually, you got a message earlier in the morning and we're like, okay, we're definitely going to talk about this today. Anyway, not thinking that we were going to get this sort of news on DeAndre Hopkins this early, but people are starting to ask, what about Larry? Should Steve Keim pick up the phone and give Larry a call? I will say I was prepping just a little bit just to kind of see, check out what Larry's been up to and see if I can find anything interesting. I took a listen to the podcast that he has with Jim Gray, and it was last week's episode. He was talking about how he was out at Harvard. He had some an extensive, is that what I want to say? So it's not like he's not going to school there, but he's doing sort of course with their business school.
Me too. I'm doing that too on the side. I've got that going. I'm doing PHNX. I'm with my family. I'm also taking online classes at Harvard.
Yeah, at Harvard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's doing business stuff. I mean, at this point, I know he left the door open.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be so curious to talk to him in the future about his decision to sort of ride away quietly into the sunset and not have his big retirement tour, etc. I mean, that will forever be one of the most mysterious things, in my opinion, of like what could have happened with the way that he finished out his career in a COVID year and then just deciding to kind of not show up to camp, but then keep that door open, saying like, we'll see how I feel, come the fall. If I feel okay, then, maybe something will change and we're not feeling it right now. And then we would talk to Kliff or Steve, Keim, and we would ask them about Larry. And, at first they would kind of entertain the conversation, like, oh, he's always got an open invite. And then it got to a point where they're like, I don't think he's coming back. And that's sort of the last we heard about it. Now what he's doing is it seems like he's seriously moving on. Business courses, not that you can't take some business courses and then also have a podcast and also be training all side and have this desire to get back onto the field. I wonder if they were to pick up the phone and say, like, listen, we're down a guy, that open invite still stands. We'd love to have you out. But then he would just be sort of like an extra piece, like a depth guy. And I don't know that would be enough for Larry to want to drop everything that he's doing and say, yeah, I'm not like in football shape. I've been doing a whole lot of other things with my life. And I'm just going to sort of flip everything upside down and rejoin you guys to be a depth piece for you. And kind of have this, really the conversation would turn from the Cardinals to Larry Fitzgerald's back, and every back game, there would be a big storyline around Larry Fitzgerald. Oh, Larry Fitzgerald's returning to this field. Larry Fitzgerald's returning to this. Larry Fitzgerald's returning to the postseason. I mean, he would have an enormous undertaking, and he's not a guy that likes the spotlight at this point. This would be huge news and create a enormous storyline, and all the attention would probably be on him.
It'd be the first time the Cardinals really have gotten national attention during this season. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but I think you have a point to a certain extent. I think Larry would not have wanted to begin the season as a depth guy for a team that was picked fourth to finish fourth in the NFC West. They're going to the playoffs. And I think that to Larry Fitzgerald is the biggest benefactor to coming back, saying, oh, I can still play. I may not be able to play 17 full games and go through a lengthy offseason with OTAs and training camp, but you need 6 to 7 games. That's if the Cardinals, progress lengthy in the postseason. Maybe Larry can do that. And again, 30 snaps, 40 snaps a game, or 30 or 40% of the snaps total in a given game. I think the Cardinals will entertain it. To your point, Chierstin, he could just say flat, no, I'm not interested. I'm moved on. Best of luck to you guys. Roll with your young players. And that could be the end of it. But something tells me that if they were to reach out and say, Larry, you have any interest? There's some things up in the air with Hopkins. We don't know if he'll be ready to go. Would you want to come back? Remember who's on this team now. It's not only, AJ Green, but Zach Ertz. They've got a bunch of veteran players anyway. It's not like Larry would be joining a team of just like a bunch of rookie players, right? He knows a lot of these established players that have been around the NFL. He's best friends with Kelvin Beachum. Right. He has immense respect for Watt and Hopkins. I think it's not a Larry, please come save us. But I do think like you want to establish reliable targets that, yes, he can't really run much anymore, but single coverage, he still, I would imagine, has elite hands. I would bring him in for a workout and just see where that went. And to your point, Chierstin, it would be a huge media story. But there's never a week you can do that without really having to worry about it. It's the Lions week, right? And then there's Christmas next week and everything that comes with that.
It wouldn't stop there, Johnny. It would not stop there. Do you know how big of a storyline that is? Larry Fitzgerald is one of the most beloved players to ever play the game. I mean, amongst his peers, he's friends with everyone, and fans love him. And for him to come back, he was such a phenomenal as well, and a future Hall of Famer. For him to come back towards the end of the season and sort of be this savior, like, now whether his role is limited or he plays a significant role, etc., he'll be deemed like this savior. Like, Larry's coming back to help save the Cardinals because they're down DeAndre Hopkins. And I mean, I could write up like 10 storylines right now that would probably like actually come to fruition and they're over dramatic if he were to return. So, okay, let me ask you this then. You seem to think now, okay, I think it wouldn't just be a 1 or 2 week storyline. I think that it would forever be a storyline until their season ends. Do you think that that is something that would be beneficial for the Cardinals? Would it be something that Larry would welcome?
I don't think Larry would mind it. I think the Cardinals, listen, if they couldn't, the NFL is all about headlines and managing expectations, and teams like the Packers and the Buccaneers and the Cowboys deal with this kind of thing all the time. Maybe not major injuries like this, but stories that, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is in the news every other day and the Packers mitigated just fine. If the Cardinals can't handle a potential Larry Fitzgerald like rotational return, like it's going to throw them off their game, by the way, they're a 500 team in their last 6 games anyway, then we have bigger questions about, the intestinal fortitude of this team and their ability to overcome adversity, right? I think this team is mentally strong enough to overcome it. And I think they could benefit from it. Does Larry that's the better question is, does Larry want to come back? And to your point, does Larry want this? I don't know the answer to that. I do think if he does not answer the bell here and come back and play, we can definitively say Larry Fitzgerald is retired, because if he passes up this opportunity, should he be given the opportunity to come back and play on a team that has championship aspirations, that is set for playoff football, that is missing now their number one receiver, and now everybody else has to pick up the baton and pick up the weight, Larry is done. If he doesn't want to come back to that, then let's have his retirement ceremony, in the coming weeks, because he's not coming back ever.
That is a really, really good point. Michaela says, okay, but imagine if Larry comes back and the Cardinals actually win the Super Bowl and he finally gets a ring. I would cry real tears.
Everybody would cry.
That would become one of the best stories in all of sports if that was the case. And I'm like a sucker for stories there's nothing that gets me more excited when I sort of picture like what could be. I always create the storyline in my head and can picture the fans' reactions, and I get carried away with it. I love imagining like what could be, especially when it's like a great story, something like this. Like, everyone was so upset they're like, Larry, you can't retire like that. Like, barely anybody got to see you play in your final season. It was an odd season. The way that it ended, you didn't even make the playoffs. Like, it just wasn't good. You got COVID down the stretch. Like, it just was not the way you want to go out. And everybody wanted him to have this farewell, Derek Jeter farewell tour, where at every stop they sort of honor him and fans get to see him one last season, knowing that, each game is one game closer to the end of his career, and get to, show their appreciation fully and feel like he felt their appreciation. And fans felt like they got robbed, but they also felt like, in a way, even though Larry, it's his decision not to play, Larry,
right.
They felt that he got robbed too of the whole experience. Again, if he felt that way, he would probably be, would be out there right now. But one of the best sports stories of all is if he came back and the Cardinals went on to win a Super Bowl with him, finally giving him that ring. Oh my God, could you imagine it?
I think the biggest reason that he has not come back, and just kind of reading through like his father's tweets, of course, the great Larry Fitzgerald Sr., longtime writer for, I think, the Milwaukee or Minnesota, one of their big newspapers, was over money. I think that Larry had an expectation of what he wanted to be paid. The Cardinals obviously had to allocate funds elsewhere. I just think now in the home stretch of the season, I feel like something financially could be worked out. If that was the hurdle to overcome and both sides had interest in it, I do not think that they would let money come between like this reunion with Hopkins out. I don't know that definitively, but if I had to put a pulse on why I think he isn't back here in Arizona this year, on top of everything that went on last year and the fact that they've added some players, is I think he had an expectation of he was making $11 million each of the past like 3 or 4 years. And so what was he going to take? Like the veteran minimum? You could bring him back now. There wouldn't be an insult associated with that. Really, no one would really have to know what he was paid. And he has assurance now he's going to be in the playoffs. I just think there are too many, I think, positives or things that make sense as it relates to this story to just ignore it completely. I think we would be doing a disservice like if we didn't at least have this conversation. Chierstin, do I think it's going to happen? I don't, but I think that there is a better than maybe like 25% chance that it does. If we woke up tomorrow morning and Larry was at the facility, like, would that surprise anybody? Wouldn't surprise me.
Tomorrow it would surprise me. Yes. I do want to I want to get to some of and that sort of goes hand in hand with Beanard's last comment. But first I want to thank everybody for joining us. We, this is obviously something that interests us, and you guys make it so much better when we put it up with you, answer any questions, and get your comments and opinions as well. So we appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, have not hit that subscribe button yet on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, we would really appreciate if you do that. When you subscribe to our podcast, it helps us out. And if you're not following us on social media yet, at PHNX_Cardinals, please be sure to do that as well. All right, let's backtrack here a little bit. NFL AZ Cardinals says, don't get me wrong, I love Larry, but I disagree. And there certainly are fans that say, okay, it's too late to even be thinking about Larry again. Bees says, Larry knows this offense already. We can't pick anyone off the street that could offer that, which is a really great point. Kind of a no-brainer in terms of bringing somebody in this late in the season. He would certainly have to kind of have a very quick, let's catch you up to speed type deal, because it's not the same exact thing where, it's not like he was just, oh yeah, I was just there last week. I mean, he certainly would have to get caught up. But you make a great point. And then Beanard asking, and this is what I was mentioning before, if it were to happen, when would it happen? Today, tomorrow, a week from now? That's a good question. I think they would want to bring him in for a workout ASAP and kind of assess the situation. But I don't think like they would make a definitive move and, sign Larry and all of a sudden he's part of the team, like something like tomorrow. I would think that would be more so they bring him in as soon as possible and maybe sign him like a week from now. I don't know. That's like my hunch, but who the heck knows with these things? What do you think? Johnny?
I'm muted because my daughter is crying in the other room and I had myself muted. I apologize. And I was just talking like everything was normal. No, to answer your question, Chierstin, they're moving quickly on this Hopkins news and they're deciding whether or not he needs surgery. So I think they would be quick in deciding what they want to do with the position, because if they have aspirations of bringing Hopkins back in the postseason, presumably the wild card round, I think that any move, any addition you're going to make, you're going to be doing it for these last 4 games. You're not doing it for the playoffs.
You would want to get him back in and working out with the team
as soon as possible.
Okay, so I just backtracked on that. So yeah, I mean, I guess you wouldn't want to wait a week from now. I'm totally backtracking on it. You would want to absolutely do it ASAP, and if that means tomorrow, then that means tomorrow.
Yeah, because again, what are they rolling out this Sunday? They're rolling out the foursome of Antoine Wesley and AJ Green on the outside and Kirk and Moore underneath. And the longer you roll with that, the more likely that's going to be the core receiving, threats that you have. But if you feel like somebody else out there, and mainly number 11, can help you, you want to get them in the building and get them acclimated. Now, the good news for Larry is he played under Kliff Kingsbury the last 2 years. He's played with Kyler Murray. You would assume the learning curve wouldn't be, immense. And then also you could build up his reps in the coming weeks. You could do it, of course, beginning now on Sunday. Again, I mean, it would not surprise me if they signed him tomorrow and he was active Sunday. just knowing Larry and his competitive nature. This move, in my opinion, would be to let's make sure we take care of business against the Dallas Cowboys and the Seattle Seahawks the last 2 weeks of the season. If you've got any doubts that Antoine Wesley can or can't do it, to me, that's what this signing would be about. It's not about the Lions this weekend. Again, we're not trying to disrespect the Lions. If you feel like we're going to barely talk about them this week, but they're 1-11-1. The Cardinals could conceivably beat them with Colt McCoy. It's like, how do we win the West? What's the quickest path to win the West? And who can help us do that? And I think if they feel like Larry can do it, they'll call him.
Do you feel like there's a chance where they say, okay, well, we're down a guy. It can't hurt to pick up the phone. Like, do you think they would only do it if they have doubts? Or do you think they would just pick up the phone just to pick up the phone and, hey, it can't hurt to bring him on or to at least gauge his interest?
I think they would. I think Steve Keim and Larry Fitzgerald have a great relationship, as do he and Michael Bidwell. And I think that Larry's going to see this news today. And he's going to know that his buddy DeAndre Hopkins is potentially done for at least for the regular season. And maybe Larry sends a text, maybe they send him a text, and maybe that's how the dialogue starts, if it does start. I do not think like Steve's picking up the phone, calling his agent and saying, get Larry in here right away. We need him. I think it's more like, where's Larry's mindset right now? We know he's got other things going on. How's your health? How's your body? Do you have any interest? I know our guys would love to see you. Why don't you come by the facility tomorrow? We'll kind of go from there. I think that it would try to be as organic as possible. It would not be like, hey, Larry, we're going to have you in the formation on Sunday. We got to get you up to speed, blah, blah, blah. But I do think Larry's going to get notified.
You a playbook tonight, right? Because, you're going to play on Sunday.
I think it's just Larry's going to see this news and somebody's going to get in contact with somebody over it. And then and you'll get a definitive answer. Larry will say, nah, I'm just not interested, guys. I appreciate it. Good luck. You guys are having a great season. Or, yeah, I can swing by and we'll have a discussion.
Reynaldi saying, we are here because we just want to feel better and not being sad alone. Well, we are all in this together. And that's why we moved the podcast up. We are here for you guys. And I think sometimes just talking it through helps make you feel better in and of itself. Michaela says that Larry's an athlete. I don't see him letting himself go so quickly. I bet he is still in killer shape. We've talked about this, the difference between staying in shape and staying in football shape. And I think the last time we talked about it was with Frank, and he'll be the first to be not even close to being the same thing. In shape is one thing.
Same with Saul. Saul feels the same way.
Yeah. Larry hopping on his Peloton and riding his Peloton while he's watching football games on Sunday and being out at practice every day and suiting up Sundays for games are like two different things. He takes care of his body. Absolutely. He's not like losing like a ton of muscle mass and gaining a bunch of fat because he's just sitting on his butt all day. For sure, he's taking care of his body more than the average person. But staying in football shape, man, that is especially that position is something that is so important. And I highly doubt that he is in football shape right now. And actually, NFL AZ Cardinals making that same comment as me about the Peloton. Larry coming off from the Peloton from the playoffs, that to go from kind of working out to being in playoff condition. That's all I'm saying. So NFL AZ Cardinals, you actually said that a couple minutes before I just made my statement. So you are spot on. You and I are in agreement. So that, I think probably the biggest thing for me is Larry's interest and whether or not it's even viable for him to think that he could suit up and compete again.
So can I tell a quick story? So I got this sent to me, so I can't take credit for this. So in 1976, so a while ago, there was a player on the Cardinals, a standout player who played tight end by the name of Jackie Smith. That was his last season with the team. He got passed up by a rookie. I think J.V. King was a rookie. Jackie Smith, phenomenal player for the Cardinals during their time in St. Louis, but was passed up and just retired. Say, I'm not the same player. I'm going to step away from the game. The Cardinals tried to bring him back. They offered him a contract. He wasn't interested and conceivably walked away. And in late September, so a little bit later than or a little bit earlier than where the Cardinals are now, the Cowboys called Jackie Smith and said, "Hey, our first string tight end just got hurt in the fourth game of the season." And Tom Landry convinced Jackie Smith to come play for the Dallas Cowboys, and they went to the Super Bowl with Jackie Smith as their tight end in his last year. So it can be done. I know it's not the same scenario. It's the only time Jackie Smith went to a Super Bowl. It's not Larry's not changing teams, but it can't. Guys can come back when they think they're retired, and this is a specific instance in which a former Cardinal did it. Now, this was like 40 years ago. My father just sent this to me because he's trying to conjure up Larry's spirit on the Cardinals this Sunday. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. If Cam Newton can come back and play for Carolina, Larry Fitzgerald can come back and play for the Cardinals.
There is this story that I'm kind of thinking now. I'm like trying to think of like crazy stories of like players, like make it like joining teams like regular or in the middle of the season. Sorry, I'm stumbling on my words because I'm trying to find this guy's name. Okay, so I got the guy's name. So there's a story that I did at a previous job when I was working in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is like a little bit of a stretch, but I'm just gonna say because it made me think of it. Do you remember? Well, when there was the NFL like lockout?
Yeah,
and I think it was in the 80s.
Well, yeah, there was one in the 80s. That was either formerly the Redskins Washington football team won the Super Bowl.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. So I did a story on Tony Robinson, who was the scab quarterback that stepped in, and they pulled him from like literally prison, and he got a work release out on a release program. So
nice.
I was a star. One of my favorite stories I've ever told. So, all right. So Tony Robinson to play for the University of Tennessee. He got into some trouble, landed in prison for drug charges. And during the lockout, teams were just pulling guys off the streets to suit up and play. And so somehow Tony Robinson got out on a work release program to be able to be the Redskins quarterback. And he led them all the way to the playoffs. And he beat a Dallas Cowboys team in order to, and by this time, pretty much Dallas's team was like all back to normal. Like all of their guys picket line, and it was a full strength Dallas team. And he was still quarterback on the other side. And beat Dallas, and then the Broncos beat. They went on to beat the Broncos to win the Super Bowl that year. So anyway, it's a fantastic story. But if a guy can be pulled from like jail, can play quarterback for a team and help lead them. Now he got like kicked to the curb once they made the playoffs. All the guys crossed the picket line, and he was not ever thought of or awarded a ring until like 3 years ago, which is why I was doing that story. But I suppose there are stories out there where you can go doing nothing to playing a big role on an NFL team. So there you go.
Yep. Again, we're not asking Larry Fitzgerald if he does come back to be the guy. That was a situation in which that was the starting quarterback. This is a rotational piece to help kind of level set before maybe an eventual Hopkins return in January for the playoffs. Help us win these next 4 games, Fitz. Can you give us some critical first downs? Can you be a red zone target? That's what I would ask. And if the answer is no, if Kliff Kingsbury pounds the table and says, my guy Antoine Wesley is better, faster, stronger, younger right now than Fitz is. He's a better fit for my offense. I was with Fitz for 2 years. Like Kingsbury is never going to come out and say that. But if that's the case, then roll with what you have. But if there's any inclination that Larry could help you and Larry wants to return, it would be one of the best stories in the NFL this year.
B is saying, so you're telling me Shane Falco was Tony Robinson in the movie The Replacements? I didn't know that. Yeah, so I have not seen The Replacements, but yeah, that movie
Chierstin.
I haven't seen it. I know.
You have to see it with Keanu Reeves. Oh, it's fantastic. It's one of those so bad it's good movies.
Okay. Yeah. I prefer with me, I prefer documentaries. Like I like the real stuff. So Tony, yes, correct. I haven't seen that movie, but I'm assuming that Shane Falco was Tony Robinson. But yeah, the real guy, the real story is very fascinating. So I'm glad that other people were following me. I was like, this is like a stretch, but I'm just going to tell the story. So I'm glad that people were following.
No, it's relevant. It's definitely relevant. Hey, listen, we're in kind of a silly point in the season right now where crazier things have happened. And if Larry Fitzgerald comes back, it would not surprise me. It was my first thought this morning when Hopkins went out, and then I was getting messages and I sent them to him. I'm like, what do we want to do with this? So makes sense.
Well, we are going to wrap things up shortly here. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I'm going to tell you guys one more time before we end things, the promotion that the DraftKings Sportsbook has going on right now. If you download the app, use the promo code PHNX, bet $1 on any team to score at a football game. If they score, you score, because you're going to get $100 in free bets. Again, using that code PHNX. All right, well, we are sort of nearing the end of our conversation here. Lindsay Smith, thank you, Lindsay, for joining in and having an important comment to make. Johnny, I heard you want to be a part of the Beanie Squad.
No, I'm starting my own squad called the Stocking Cap Squad on bets today, where I had a stocking cap because it was a balmy 57 degrees in Maricopa this morning when I went for a jog. So I had a stocking cap on. And then I had wet head, so I didn't want my hair on bets to look really poor. So I put a stocking cap on. So no, I'm not part of your club. I have started my own club.
Espo, also dogging you. We're getting too far. What's this quote? Pain heals, chicks dig scars.
That's Shane Falco from the Replacements.
That's the movie I'm missing out on. Okay.
Yeah, it was cold today. Bernard, I appreciate your prayers. Thoughts and prayers to me in Maricopa. It was cold.
Have we left anything else on the table here in terms of talking about the DeAndre Hopkins injury and Larry Fitzgerald?
This whole situation sucks. We're positive here. The Cardinals are 10-3. Twitter right now is a dumpster fire, and if you read it, everybody's acting like the season is not over. The number one point I certainly want to get across, Chierstin, during this podcast is, if Kyler Murray is a top 5 quarterback, you can win games without DeAndre Hopkins. You should be able to win divisions without DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is immensely talented. He's great. He should go in the Hall of Fame. This is on Kyler Murray now. It has been. Monday night, didn't play great. Like Kyler Murray, these next 4 games, we need to see the best version of Kyler Murray as a Redbird, as an Arizona Cardinal in red and white. And if we do, everything will take care of itself because they have the infrastructure and the pieces in place, offense, defense, special teams, the receiving core that's still left here to win and to win big. So it's all about, for me, is Kyler Murray healthy? They should win games, period.
I agree. I just think that injuries are such a bummer because the star players are the guys that you kind of, to lose JJ Watt and DeAndre Hopkins for any amount of time. And this isn't Hop's first time being sidelined either this year. To have him out. So we've got 4 games remaining and he's missed 3 already, right? Am I doing math right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's 7 games total. So he will have played in 10, missed 7. You just don't want to see your star players go down. And so that's the most frustrating part. It's like, it's not that I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, the Cardinals are in deep crap right now because they have to have DeAndre to win. They don't have to have him to win games, especially not these last 4 games. But this team is special, and you hate to hear about injuries like this. And with his future being uncertain, because again, we touched on it, and you could sit there and say like, okay, well, he is they're hoping that he's going to be back for the postseason. Doesn't mean that it's as simple as that, right? And we want our star players out there.
0 100-yard games this year, and they're 10-3.
Yeah.
He is a big part of what they want to do. He's a tremendous player, but he's not like, he should not be the reason this team wins or loses the rest of the year.
Pablo asking, why didn't Justin Pugh play on Monday if he was active? They just didn't feel like he was ready enough to be out there. He should be out there, this week against the Lions, but they activated him and it was probably going to be a game time decision. And they got out there on Sunday and just decided, hey, we're going to wait one more week.
I will say, Chierstin, so they've been very careful with injuries this year, sitting players. And I understand that. And they built up a lot of collateral when they were 7-0. But they're 3-3 in their last 6 games. And the NFC West, while we feel pretty good about it, it's not assured. It's not a sure thing after Monday night. Like, injuries are part of the game. I don't think that we can be in a position where we're just kind of sitting guys or making them active moving forward if they aren't going to play. I think the players you have to have active, if they're the best players, they should be in there because they need to scratch and claw to win the NFC West. And then worry about playoff football when you get there. Every week goes by now, I'm a little bit more concerned that fast start kind of derailed their sense of urgency a little bit, especially at home. Like, I don't know. It's something I think that's worth monitoring because it's not that they aren't peaking at the right time.
Their fast start for that, really?
I feel like they built up all this collateral with the 7-0 start, and they're just like, okay, now we have all these games when we banked these. Let's just make sure we're healthy for the playoffs. And it's just like, you haven't even won the West yet. Like go out and put together a couple good performances in a row. You've been a 500 team, albeit without Kyler Murray. But I mean, Kyler Murray's 1-2 in his last 3 starts, dating back to the Packer game. They need to string together a stretch of good football, and all this like, let's wait, let's make guys active but not play them. Like, they could have used Justin Pugh on Monday night. There's a little bit of like,
they could have used him. Yes.
Yeah. Let's not be cute in our well, we're good. We have this play your best players. If they're active, play them. And if they're not active, then they should be on IR. I mean, like, Hopkins and Kyler Murray theoretically should have been on injured reserve. But they didn't want to do that. And right now, like, are they going to put Hopkins on IR now? Like, I don't know. But
yeah, but why does it matter? The only reason that you would want to put a guy on IR is that so that you could elevate somebody else. But if you don't feel like you need to elevate somebody else, then what's the point? Like, why does that even matter? It doesn't.
Well, they're thin at certain positions already as it is, though. They're thin at cornerback. They're thin in the interior offensive line. I'm not saying it's something to worry about currently, but I need to see a sense of urgency from this team down the stretch. Like, throw the record aside and come and be ready and to win every week. I feel like there's just kind of like we've banked all these wins. Let's just there's a coast method right now. It just feels like that. The Rams had a sense of urgency Monday night without a bunch of players to come to that building and start fast and win. And I think the Cardinals didn't. And that's disappointing, especially given their good bill of health coming into that game. So we have not seen that sense of urgency. At least I haven't for a while.
That's an interesting note. Well, let's end on this question. I know we scrapped our mailbag segment, but we did get a similar question. So I know at least a couple of you guys are wondering. Beanard asking, do you guys think the fail to spike the ball was on Kliff or Kyler on Monday? Everything felt disorganized there at the end, and there certainly was a miscommunication. It's hard to, if you're not in the huddle, it's hard to know like 100%, what exactly happened. Or out there on the field rather. But I mean, in my opinion, I would say Kyler, but I don't know. I would also say Kyler. Kyler said it was between he and the offensive line, and the offensive line thought they were spiking it. So I think maybe Kyler just had a lapse of judgment. I don't think it would have mattered though. I mean, like, at that point, the game was taken away from them on a phantom holding call by Harlow on Kyler's run. Like, that call was complete another garbage. I don't even want to get into the officiating on Monday night because I think it was really gross. So I don't think it matters. I think that's a non-story. Especially when you compare it to like the AJ Green miscommunication. It's not even close to that. The Cardinals lost that game well before that happened, and I think it was in part because of the officiating. Pablo asking, will Chase Edmonds play this week? He is expected to play, so that should be something to look forward to. I don't know. We continue to get questions in here. Questions to wrap things up. We appreciate the questions. That might have actually been the last one. I think the rest of the ones coming in are just comments. But hey, we appreciate you guys so much joining us to be able to discuss things, the not so good news that came down today, and it is what it is. We're going to continue to talk about DeAndre Hopkins and the receiving core, and maybe we'll talk more about Larry if line continues. Would certainly love to be talking about Larry at this point in the season, so that might make things interesting and fun. But I hope we all feel a little bit better about the situation, knowing that the Cardinals have playmakers that can keep them not only afloat, but playing at a high level and putting them in a position to win every game in these last 4 games of the regular season. And hopefully they'll be able to play back in the post. Another good thing about DeAndre Hopkins is I know injury is one thing, but when it comes to him and practicing, he's a guy that doesn't need a whole lot of practice and can step back in. So as long as that knee is feeling good, that's one guy that I think okay, well, we expect great things, even with the mistake.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, again, if you guys have not subscribed to our YouTube channel or our podcast, it helps us out tremendously if you hit that button. Follow us on social media as well at PHNX_Cardinals. And Johnny and I actually are going to be talking about curses tomorrow. So don't want to miss that podcast. Maybe this team has a little curse hovering over them that we might need to try and break. So Johnny and I are going to have that for you guys tomorrow. And then me, you, and Frank are going to be back in studio to pregame this big time matchup against the Detroit Lions.
Oh no, we say all this and watch them lay an egg on Sunday. That would be something.
I know. We need to respect their opponent as well.
Do we?
All right. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.